Okay, the channel strip. Autism is a diagnosis that we've all heard around the world. Autism diagnosis is very prevalent in Ireland as in any other European country. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder or neurodevelopmental diagnosis. Autism affects a lot of children. We have all seen a child on the bus having a meltdown. We have all seen a child in public who's non-verbal. We've all seen children with their headphones on who prefers different sounds at different levels. We've all seen children who have sensory preferences. We all know of a child who has a very sort of specific feeding pattern, feeding intake. We all know kids who only eat nuggets. This is things in society that we are all aware of. These are not new pieces of information. This diagnosis can be summarized as a neurodevelopmental diagnosis. It's a diagnosis that usually involves difficulties with social interaction, with repetitive behaviors, repetitive interests. Another diagnosis that we've all heard about, a lot of people self-diagnose as ADHD. A lot of people call themselves people who have an attention disorder, a hyper-focus on certain things that often trickles into their life in terms of their cognition, their sleep routine, their ability to keep friends, maintain relationships, go to work, and sustain everyday life. I myself at one stage thought I would self-diagnose as ADHD until I went through the screening process and did not meet the threshold required. It just shows that it is a prevalence diagnosis, that is a diagnosis that people resonate with very strongly because we all struggle in different areas. Some people are good at numbers, some people not so much. I need to look at my fingers to count my little shopping. Others can do huge numbers at really fast rates in their mind. We're all different, we're all unique, and we're all blessed. The truth is, every child is different, and at the channel strip, I'm particularly interested in the kids who are struggling. I'm particularly interested in the kids who have, I suppose, different abilities, and then also with that, some other different disabilities. This does not make them difficult to be around, it does not make them a burden, it just means that they are extra special, needing extra special attention. Companies like the Sensory Pod have these kids in mind and have focused their attention on making these kids their priority. It is very difficult living in society as it stands for everybody, whether you're on the developmental or whether you're on the sort of spectrum or not. There is an over bombarding of information and data all the time. There's marketing happening everywhere you go. When you're driving, the bus in front of you is trying to sell something to you. On your phone, you say something about the microwave and Instagram's trying to sell you the next best thing. Everyone is currently overwhelmed with so much data to process. The Sensory Pod and people like the Sensory Pod are constantly looking for ways to make life slightly better for people who basic data points causes quite a lot of responses. And so for these people, things like the Sensory Pod does a lot of amazing things for them. It helps them regulate themselves a little bit better. It helps them calm down. It helps them sort of learn in a different way. The Sensory Pod is available in schools where teachers can use it as a preemptive tool for when kids are starting to show the signs that they may be slightly overwhelmed. It's also available in the airport where traveling is a very difficult concept for all children of all ages. And so that's a unique piece that shows how well placed the Sensory Pod is. The Sensory Pod is available in DCU, who are the first autism-friendly campus in the entire country, and they should be very proud of themselves because kids with sensory problems develop into adults with sensory abilities. And so we need to encourage a full body of people who can function at their personal best. And that's why I'm proud to be here today, to be talking to Robert, because he's doing exactly what I think we should be doing as a people, which is thinking about everybody's abilities and not hyper-focusing on their disabilities. The Channel Strip. Welcome to the Channel Strip, where we channel our energy into learning new things and strip away negative misconceptions. That's my little phrase. This is Robert Murray. I'll let him take the lead. Robert, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks very much.
Thank you for, a couple of things. First of all, I'm very impressed you agreed to this video.
Yeah.
Because I rang this man and I said, hi, my name is Faber. I'm a doctor. Listen, I'm a bit of a weirdo. I potentially have ADHD. I like what you do.
Yeah.
Will you talk to me? And he was like, okay, cool.
You're enthusiastic anyway, so You got me early on. Yeah.
I was very sold. And then I rang him back and I said, do you mind building us a pod? And he was like, okay, cool. I was very surprised. Why are you so open to this?
So our background in this is we're doing sensory rooms for about 20 years.
Right.
But 8 years ago, one of my team had a child with autism.
Okay.
And he came up with this idea.
Wow.
So he reckoned if he had something like this, it would make his child's life easier. So we got the first prototype. We tried it in rehab care not rehab care, in Enable Ireland in Sandymount.
Okay.
They tried it and found straight off that the prototype was working very well. They found that angry, aggressive kids were a lot calmer. So they were less likely to strike at carers if they were spending some time in the sensory pod. So then we reckoned, okay, this is something that will work. So what we then did was we fine-tuned it to be more like what you see here now, okay? And we saw this originally favoured just as something for special needs schools.
Right.
So we brought it in, and so we thought it was a small niche market. But what has happened is it just continues to snowball in all directions. And most of these, we haven't gone looking to the market. It's sort of come to us. So what happened was we started with special needs schools. Then we were going to mainstream schools. A few of those got onto us because they had some people that were coming in that had regulation and calming requirements. So they were looking to make themselves accessible. So that was the next stage. But now our biggest market by a country mile is the mainstream schools. Wow. So what we found was that no sooner did the sensory pod go into the mainstream schools, that what was happening was that the schools had maybe 6 or 10 kids in mind for using this. They get it in and then they find, hold on, there's another 30 kids that have no issues beyond anxiety, panic attacks or whatever, and they get the very same benefit. So then what we also had a principle on explaining that the teachers were using it. In essence, anyone that wants to withdraw, de-escalate, regulate, they spend 5 minutes in there. It's like going into a decompression unit. It's just very zen and relaxing. So then they find it works very effectively. So that's how the market grew. We've now universities that have got on to us. We've hospitals that use it. So you have kids, and this is not necessarily for the neurodiverse, but it is. You have a kid that needs to go into a fracture room. So they're going to go in, meet a doctor, maybe to have the thing sawn off. They're uptight, so they go in and spend some time and decompress, and all of those things work. So we constantly get feedback.
Do you know what it is? Yeah, of all the things you've said, and you've said a lot. A couple of things stand out to me. Number one, this is snowball. It's just taking in, and I like it so. Yeah, that's the first point. The second point is you seem to be a very good listener. So first, your employee comes to you and says, "My kid has been diagnosed. Here's what I think," and you listen to that. Yeah. I ring you. You listen to that. Yeah. You seem to be a man who listens.
Well, I think, and this is just from a sales perspective, right. I think if you listen to people rather than tell them what they want, you do better. Right. So that's what we always try to do here. Ask questions, understand what people are looking for, and get the feedback.
So I read the website. I know that you were in business in 2009. Is that factual?
Well, we're in business 50 years.
Wow, okay. Didn't see that part.
Yeah. But we're doing the sensory for the last 20 years.
Okay, wow. Yeah. It's wild to understand the need. Yeah. And I think what you said about teachers going in, about the schools thinking, oh, we need it for 10 kids and then 30 need. It just says that before the diagnoses, pre-diagnosis, there's a bunch of things that you can catch, right? Yeah. On the website, I saw that some of the target audience here would be kids with panic attacks and anxiety. And that's often undiagnosed, misdiagnosed.
Huge at the moment.
I mean, we don't even need to diagnose it. My take is everyone has had a panic attack or a pre-panic attack at some stage in their life. Everyone knows what having difficulty sleeping feels like, having a lot of things on your mind, feeling overwhelmed. We all deal with stress. Yeah. And so when we just minus the diagnoses and just kind of go, look, stress, as a whole, what's your neurobiological response to stress?
Yeah.
I think things like the sensory pod addresses that.
Yeah.
So from a scientific engineering perspective, what exactly makes this relaxing?
So it's big enough that 3 adults can comfortably get inside it, okay? But it's small enough to, so that will allow people not feel claustrophobia inside. Okay. So I've had people that are claustrophobic and they've been loath to get into it, but oftentimes they'll go and they'll sit on the edge.
Right.
They'll go in and they say, okay, well, look, if you don't close the door, I'm happy enough. So I said, look, you're in charge. You do what you need. So they'll go in and then they'll find that it's bigger than they anticipate. So 3 adults will fit into it comfortably, but normally there's 1 child in it at a time. Sometimes you'll have a child in with a SEN teacher, okay, or a parent or something like that. But how it works is that it's small enough to be intimate and give that protected cocoon feel.
It did feel like that when I went inside and I lay down. I was like, oh, it feels like it's hugging you in a very weird psychological way. That's
what the kids are looking for. They're looking to withdraw from the outside world.
Right.
So they go into this, slide the door over, and then they feel protected, but it's big enough not to feel that it's claustrophobic. Right. Okay. So they'll go in. We don't need to train kids how to use it. They'll go in. They'll decide on the lighting color that they want. The schools will turn it on, turn it off in terms of having the Android screen on. And that's it. They're looking to withdraw, de-escalate and regulate. Simple.
Tell us a little bit about the screen and the educative piece with that with schools.
Okay, so the screen is just a 32-inch Android screen.
Okay.
So we didn't have that originally, obviously. So we started to use that purely just, you'll see in there we've got speakers, so we can pipe in music, which is just calming and relaxing. So then we said, okay, we'll marry that up with something on the screen. So we sometimes will have giant turtle swimming, or you could have a stream in a forest and just, the sounds of birds singing, etc. So you have sort of Zen things playing, and that just gives the ambience for a child to withdraw, okay? But like all of these things, once you have the Android screen in there, the next thing that happened was somebody said, well, actually, because that's just connected through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, we've access to the whole internet. So then SEN teachers that would do one-on-ones with children, they then started doing one-on-ones with children in there. So if you've got ADHD and you're the type of child that is in class, a bird flies by and you've lost the child, they can go in there with greater intensity. Yes. Okay? So for the teachers, and this is feedback that we get from them. Right. So anything, it's not a touch screen, but anything that they can do one-on-one on their tablet or their computer can be mirrored onto that. And then you can use that with the child with greater intensity. So you'll see on our video on the website, there's a SEN teacher in there, and there are fish moving to the right and moving to the left. And the child is to move their hand the way that the fish are going. So they're just using that, the whole internet educational tools that they've got. Anything that they can use, they can just do it on there.
So like they're probably collaborating with their mood boards and
Correct.
Canvas and all the things that they use in class.
Completely.
Amazing, amazing. So I saw that you're in the Dublin airport.
Yeah.
And I saw that it's slightly different because you also have this motor aspect to that too, not just the sit down.
So I suppose the Dublin airport is slightly different in that that's a sensory room.
Yes. Yes.
So we manufacture sensory rooms, and that's what I was saying. We were doing that for the last 20 years. We'd be the market leaders in building sensory rooms. So they're the rooms typically you'll see with bubble tubes and infinity mirrors and things like that. So we were doing those a long time before we came up with this idea. So as I said, we came up with this idea 8 years ago, and this is all about de-escalation, regulation and calming. Right. So this is about removing yourself from the outside world. So sometimes we'll have schools and they will have a sensory room and a sensory pod. So because you'll have some kids that the last place on earth they want to go when they're looking to regulate is into a sensory room because there's too much going on. Yes, so then this is now, not many schools have the money for both, but oftentimes they'll make a judgment call. They say, look, we'd rather this. If regulation is their goal, they'll go for a sensory pod more than, and then finally, the way the curve works on this is that in secondary schools, it's probably 70% sensory pods. Third level, nearly 100% sensory pods.
Oh, really? Okay.
Primary, it's probably 30% sensory pods and more, 70% sensory rooms. Okay?
So who likes the rooms? Like, what sort of people like a sensory room?
So what happens is, from teens up, the biggest issue that they're having, as you mentioned earlier, whether you're neurodiverse or not, the biggest issue they mostly have is they do not want to be out of control and having a meltdown in front of their peers. Okay, so what we find is that second level and third level, it's all about allowing them go into a space that will enable them de-escalate, so that it doesn't go to having a meltdown. So what happens is the teens up, they know when things are bubbling up. They know long before it's going to escalate that things are getting uncomfortable. So at that stage, if you've got a sensory pod on the school grounds, they can then go into the sensory pod at that stage and bring themselves down. So they might be up at a 6, they'll bring themselves back down to 2, and then they're okay. Whereas if they don't have that, it can escalate and then go to a full-blown meltdown. And that's what they really don't want to have in front of their peers. And that's whether you're neurodiverse or not, you know.
Or not. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Has there been any sort of older adult workplace, I think I might have read something about that, in sort of corporate world looking for this type of stuff?
Yeah, so we've had a few businesses that have looked at it. We've got it in some hospitals, as I mentioned. An interesting thing at the moment is St. Vincent's Hospital in Dublin are looking at it. They've had a team evaluate it, and they came back very enthusiastic. They were looking to get one for their casualty department. So they've made a recommendation. You know, it's down to funding now, but they've made a recommendation. But the interesting thing was they've come back and said they would like to get 2. And this was interesting, and this was a first. They said they want to get 1 for the public and 1 for those working there. So that's doctors, consultants, nurses. They're just saying, look, it's a highly stressful area to work in. So they were getting in and they were seeing the benefit of the sensory pod. And they said, well, actually, that would work for us.
So I'm going to go on a little selfish spiel now about the doctors and how difficult our jobs is and how incredibly stressful our job is and how that sort of sleep pod thing that we have is probably the closest, best thing that we've got to like sort of quick nap, power nap. If you're like on a night shift and you want to put your bleep down and you want to have a quick 20-minute nap, we kind of go into that. And they kind of encourage us to use that in the middle of the day as well. With just not just napping, just like, okay, just I have a 10-minute window. I'll go into the thing, cover over, put my headphones on and just try and survive what just happened, whatever, a few minutes ago. But it's very hard to book because, as you can imagine, and then sometimes people don't even know it's in the hospital. So there's a huge like HR drive at the start of each rotation to sort of let us know what sort of spaces are available. I think that with the new children's hospital opening, there's concerns with the res rooms. Do we have enough? I don't know if the hospital guys want me talking about this, but there is concerns. Will there be enough beds for staff to be able to sleep overnight? Will there be rest areas? I think that there's certainly a need for, honestly, de-stress for doctors. Like, I don't want to I think that sometimes people look at doctors and think that we have this great life. And honestly, maybe we do, but we also have an incredibly difficult job. And we're working, if you're pediatrics in particular, you're working with the sickest kids in the country. It knocks you. And I know I've been floored at times with really challenging sort of scenarios. And sometimes you just have to take a breath to just be like, what just happened? Do you know what I mean? And being able to get into something like this.
Well, that was a first.
St. Vincent's they're on the edge, and I'd say I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bunch of people following suit after that, trying to go, we want this for our staff. Yeah,
well, that was the first I'd heard of it being used exclusively for staff that are not neurodivergent. They're just in a highly stressful environment. So like it feeds into how schools will actually use these, because for a lot of schools, what they will do is first thing in the morning, you'll have some kids arrive at school and they're wired
from just a routine.
Just the journey going to school, the routine, all of that. So when they arrive on the school grounds, they go in and spend 5 minutes in that. That allows them decompress. And then you have a different child for the day, a more receptive child for the day, and then they will thrive. They're less likely to self-absent from school. So we're finding all of these things that are they're targeting it rather than waiting for kids to be pent up, and then straight after lunch break those same children will go in and spend 5 minutes. So you don't need to spend half an hour in it. It's just a small time allows you to regulate and decompress.
I love it. Okay, I'm conscious of the guys. I'm going to pop inside and sit there in the Yappa way, and then I'll have you ask my questions on this side. Is that okay?
Do you work with social workers?
It's not that we don't work with social workers. Mostly we're dealing with schools and the SEND teachers within schools. So the only social workers we've dealt with are within the HSE, as I said, in some of the centres that they've got.
So how do you guys incorporate child protection into what you do?
So there are no locks on the doors, firstly. Secondly, we'll show you later, but when you slide the door over, there's a viewing window that protects the adult and the child. So if an adult is in the pod without the door open, you can actually see in through the viewing window. We have the viewing window pixelated so that it's not a distraction every time somebody would walk by, but that's how it works.
How do you, how parents who are coming from other countries who have children with additional needs, how are they being brought through this process, or have you guys been working with them?
So we've had a couple of instances with the HSE where they have looked to use these for the centres that the kids are coming in, because as you say, a lot of those are quite traumatised. So they can have the sensory pod within the area so that when the children need to regulate and engage with the HSE personnel, that they can do it in a calm and relaxed way. And we also had a child psychologist in the UK who's written books, and he's a sort of thought leader in this. And one of the things that he has seen the sensory pod, and he is organising a clinical paper for us free of charge, because he wants to see it used more roundly. But his feeling was that in a medical environment, people are waiting for a year to see this man. The child gets an hour with him for him to do his diagnosis and do everything. He reckons that if in his practice he had a sensory pod and they spent the first 10 minutes in the sensory pod before they came into them, they would get much better outcomes for their hour, because the first 30 minutes everything is new. They're dealing with a health professional that they've never met before. So if they can actually be relaxed before they go in, he believes it'll make a big difference in terms of the clarity and the diagnosis that they'll be able to make, that they're dealing with a relaxed child rather than a child that spends half of their 1 hour that they've been waiting for a year and they're discombobulated.
Is it that a child needs to be diagnosed already before they use this, or?
No. So our experience is that in schools, once they start using it, what they'll find is that they had certain children in mind, and they said, okay, we need a sensory pod and it's for these kids, and mostly neurodiverse kids with ADHD, etc. So they have these, they have a profile in their mind of what is required. As soon as they get the sensory pod in, they then find, well, actually, it's a much broader church. So they've got kids that have anxiety, nothing else in their lives, just anxiety. They need to regulate and withdraw. And one of the great things that we found, or the feedback that we got from a lot of schools, is that it's a great leveler, because some of the kids that might be the cool kids that aren't neurodiverse, they've no issues, but they're using this sensory pod, and then it's a leveler because it's seen this is something for everyone. This just isn't for those kids, and they all get the same benefit. So we've also had teachers using it. Once again, ultimately it's a space that is a bit like going into a spa or a decompression chamber. You want to go in and withdraw and take time out. You spend 5 minutes on this, and that will do the job for you.
Like, how do you justify who needs it?
We would find that the parents are the best judges of their children's needs. And one of the things that we'll find is that if parents make their voices heard, especially with healthcare professionals, you're more likely to get the outcome that you require. So we'll have situations that parents know their kids need to regulate. They mightn't have had a diagnosis, but they know in their heart that this child needs help. They might be autistic. They might not have had a diagnosis yet, but they know what they're dealing with on a daily basis, and they know better than anyone else. Okay. So we will have some scenarios that we don't supply many of these to families, mainly because of the cost. Not everyone has the pockets deep enough to fund this. That being said, we've had some families that have gone through GoFundMe, and you can be creative to get these funded.
How are you being strategic in terms of who the schools that are able to avail of it, regardless of their
cost?
Funds? Yeah.
It's interesting. We find that in schools that don't have the money, they can get creative. We've had schools that have had these funded by local businesses. We've had schools and universities that have had these funded by Lions Club, Rotary Club. So these, so you can get charitable payments. You can get businesses doing it. So they will do it for their own reasons. It could be just for branding, to reflect well on the business. A lot of businesses nowadays are looking to have a corporate social responsibility project, showing that they're part of the community and they give something back. So this is a great way that they can do something like that, because in essence, this is children, education and disability. If you're looking for a project to get behind, you're never going to get a nicer one than that if you're looking for kudos. But also we found that when you go to the parents' councils of schools to fund these, a lot of the parents' councils, they will go and they say, okay, the school wants one of these, we don't have enough money, over to the parents' council to come up with ideas. So they'll do fundraising, etc. But one of the things that they found the best is if you do it through corporate social responsibility projects. You'll get it could be a family that are funding it. It could be a high street business. Sometimes it can be the grandparents of a child that has autism. So their child is in the school. They say, look, we have a business, we want to do this. And then you've other business that they will do it just for their own branding, and they will have a ribbon cut when it's handed over, get it into the local newspapers. So then everyone's a winner. If the school gets their sensory pod for free and the business gets something that reflects well on the business, I think everyone wins.
And there's nobody it doesn't touch. This sensory pod, from grandparents to parents to the wider community at large to medical doctors, and how we interact, as you said, with diagnosing people. The waiting list, let's not even talk about waiting lists and how hard it is to get a diagnosis. And sometimes, as this, what's the doctor that you mentioned?
Professor Andy O'Donnell, he's in the UK.
Okay, so like diagnosis is a tricky thing. You come in on a certain day, you mightn't get a diagnosis. Your parents don't fill in the form in the right way, you mightn't get a diagnosis. So that's a tricky business in and of itself. And having a child well regulated and interact well with that screening process that the family have waited for over 4 years, I mean, that's win-win for everybody involved. I'm so floored at how much is involved in this. It sounds like, the sensory pod for, but then you go into the details of this, and I'm like, wow, this is a must-need. I think this needs to be in every school and every facet of society. Did I not see on the website that Dundrum have it in the shopping centre?
No, they have a sensory room.
A sensory room. I'm mixing them up. Yeah. But either ways, the point is addressing our sensory need as a population. We're not doing enough of it, as far as I'm concerned. From what I've heard today, it's like there's such a need. The question shouldn't be, should we get a pod? It's how can we get a pod?
Correct. Well, funny thing, Favour, is a lot of the markets that we're in, they've come to us. We didn't have a grand strategic plan. We've supplied these into the Middle East. we were at Expo 2020 in Dubai. They got on to us because they wanted to show what the 21st century is all about. So they had 4 of them at Expo 2020, and it was recognised as, you know, this is the way of the future. We have them in shopping centres in Abu Dhabi. So all of these things have happened. They flew us out there to. We weren't looking to supply. We supplied them to Australia on pallets. We haven't marketed there, but it's just word of mouth.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Wow. It just, storytelling is effective when it means something to people.
Yeah, yeah.
And the best way to market is to solve people-related problems.
Yeah.
And I hate the word problem. We were talking about the language with the gang, and I hate the word problem. I hate the word. You don't want kids to feel like they're a burden. But it's not that. It's that this is a real need for parents. It's a real need for teachers. It's a real need for. And while it might not be, I don't want to have negative language around this, around diagnoses in particular. But I suppose it provides a solution. Shall I say that?
Completely. But since post-COVID, Favour, we've had loads of positive feedback, just in terms of school attendance.
Right.
A lot of kids have self-absented, so they just said, I don't want to go back. They got into poor habits, and this is an issue. And what we've found is that when you have a sensory pod in the school, they're a lot more likely to attend because they know they have the safety net. So they know when they feel uncomfortable, they can go spend 5 minutes in the sensory pod. That's the first thing. Secondly, they're thriving in school because they know they have the safety net. They don't have the big question mark in the class in the back of their mind. What if? They know that when they need to regulate, they can go spend 5 minutes in the sensory pod, and it's sort of been positive all around.
I'm going to ask the same question from outside.
Yeah.
That you were sort of addressing. Why does this make you relax? Can we just talk from the inside now?
Yeah.
What about this is actually relaxing?
So the size of it, you can see there's 3 adults in it at the moment. The size of it is large enough for it not to be claustrophobic, but small enough to give that cocooned, protected feel when somebody wants to regulate and withdraw. So they want to break from the outside world to sort of come down and relax. They slide the door over, and then they're in their own little world that allows them then get their thoughts together, relax. We've got the speakers here that you can have calming music piped in. We've got the screen that you can actually have content that is relaxing as well, and zen. So all of these things are, in fact, we have one of these in a palliative environment.
Wow. Very
So
nice.
that's that's nothing to do with autism or anything like that. It's just people want time to get their thoughts together and relax. And as I said previously, we have a situation that in schools we have teachers using it. And the first time a principal told me that, I thought they were giving out to us. And then she said, no, look, if the teacher is more competent to teach their class from spending 5 minutes in this before they go in, I'm all for it. So, as I said, it's a broad church. There's so many people that are finding that this meets their needs, and they're things that we never even dreamed of.
Tell me a little bit about this screen here.
Okay. So we've just got a mirror. Mirrors go down well. A lot of kids will actually enjoy looking at themselves in the mirror. We've then got this control panel where you've buttons you can change. You can change the colours. That is backlit there. We also have it here. You can see. You can change. So you don't need to train. What happens is kids will go in and they'll spend 5 minutes and they'll have the whole thing worked out. Yeah. Whether they want lighting or no lighting, they'll do it. That's a reading light. So all of these things are just options for a child to personalise it to whatever they want to do. So we'll have some that will have all of that off. They won't have the screen on. They just want to be in a quiet place that can withdraw. Others will want the calming music piped in, and then they'll have the lighting, and then you could have whatever content you want to have on the screen. You can customize So we'll have situations where some schools don't want a particular thing, but our experience is that most schools go for everything. So by everything, you'll go for the wrap. So you'll see that we've got a wrap in it here. You can pick any theme you want on the planet, okay? So you'll see that on the website we've got options for primary schools, secondary schools and third level. For third level, you want to have something that does not infantilize it, and more importantly, second level. So you have kids that have transitioned out of primary, so you need to have something that is age appropriate. Our experience is that when we have schools look at it, they'll say, in the main, they'll go for everything. They'll say, we want to have the screen. You'll notice there are no buttons on the screen. So the SEN teacher is in complete control of that, okay? So you can't have inappropriate content because it's obviously internet led. They will normally take everything, and that's the only times we've had schools that haven't gone for everything is they really haven't had the budget, and they've cut corners. But I would say 95% of the schools that will go for it, or libraries or whatever, they'll go for everything.
Greg, your turn.
Yeah, so on a personal level, what has been your favourite memory associated with this? Has there ever been a time where someone's come to you like thank you for your product, like it has changed our lives or has changed our work environment? Do you have a favourite memory associated with all this?
Not so much with this. We do get a lot of positive feedback from schools with regards to the sensory pod. We will get testimonials or notes from the schools saying, look, this has been amazing, we're delighted with it, and they often are advocates. So what you'll find is that if a sensory pod goes into an area, we'll frequently get a few others peppered in that area because everyone talks. So you'll have a principal in the school, they'll get this and say, this is working amazing. And then we'll get some other calls. And we have a sort of a map up on the website so that people can see which the closest schools are. So because ultimately our biggest market, as I said earlier, is still schools, whether they're primary, secondary or third level.
Florence?
Sorry, I had a question about just more so the branding side of things, but I think you've answered it. You said it's kind of customized to the people, so it's not necessarily that it's a branding thing.
No, so you can have any image that you want. You could have your face on it if that's what you wanted, so long as it's pixelated in the correct size or format, resolution. Thank you. For the printers, that's just a blank canvas.
Okay. So, I have two more questions actually that I remembered. Firstly, with the schools, is it your responsibility to make sure that the teachers aren't making this a thing of timeouts? Because that would then defeat the purpose. Is it like, oh, Florence, you're there now, okay, you need to go into the pod? So
the only issue, you don't get training with it, okay? So I did have a principal who was sort of a little Germanic in his output, or not his output, in his thinking. He was saying, okay, well look, we can give this to the child for 9 to 9:15, and this one, I said, look, you can't schedule it. When a child needs it, they need it. And you can then decide if they need it more than the child that's in it. So sometimes you might have to say, look, can you come out, Johnny? Mary needs to have a go in it. So you can't schedule when you need to use it. You need to use it when you need to use it. That's the first thing. With regards to training, it's normally just suck it and see. Like what you'll find is when this goes into school, everyone will be piling into it on day one. There'll be great interest and excitement about it. But then thereafter, the school, they will talk to the kids and they say, look, this is what it's for, and it's not a place to play. It's a place when you need to withdraw and regulate yourself or calm yourself. That's why you go into it, that's generally how it works.
So you recommend basically that it's child-led as opposed
Correct.
to and then did you have something else?
Yeah, in terms of child-led, within a day of this being in the school, the kids that know that it's going to help them will know. So we've been at busy exhibitions, you know, where you have a shell stand. So you've got people walking up and down the whole time, really busy. And you'll see that there are quite a few kids there. They have their ear defenders on, etc. And they'll have never seen a sensory pod before. They're all intrigued and they'll pile in and they'll have a go, etc. And time after time, it's like the question that was mentioned a while ago, time after time, they'll come out after 2 minutes. Oh my God, that's amazing. So they get it straight away. They understand what it's delivering. And that is a child that never saw this before they walked down that aisle. And they've also been rushed out of it because there's other kids waiting to have a go in it. So they understand very quickly what it's delivering.
Okay. And then my next question, then the last one. Do you think, and I don't know, maybe you have the answer to this question, but do you think that, do you know, from as young as maybe a year old, because actually my baby's 4 months, right, and her personality is developing. So my sister was saying, one of her friends, her child is kind of picking food. Again, just let's just say this is maybe early symptoms of a child, again, that has ADHD. So my question, to be very clear and specific, is, do you feel like from that age, from a child that's a year old, do you feel like if parents can afford this and they can actually get this earlier on, do you feel like it can prevent, or should I say, not prevent, I don't want to sound ignorant, maybe not prevent, but do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I understand.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have the clinical understanding. That's the first thing. But I will say that we have it supplied into creches as well. So preschool kids are also getting the benefit from a sensory pod. It's a small market because most of the creches are private, but we have supplied it to creches with very positive feedback.
Okay.
I just have one last question.
Do you know, before that question, I'll just bounce
Shoot right in.
of what she said. And the reason why I'm going to, just to wrap that thought line, I think it's going to be great when we have the data points from your man in the UK, the professor, I can't remember his name, the guy who's doing the clinical trial, who'll be able to sort of give you concrete data to be able to answer questions like that. I think it's really important to just wrap around what is autism, what is ADHD. It is a neurodevelopmental, neurobiological diagnosis that is not, basically in English, essentially means it is both your genetics and your environment and a whole load of things that we honestly don't understand. And so the answer to that question is yes, some kids are genetically programmed to become a certain thing and nothing you do will ever change that. But there are some kids who it was the environment that made that, let me say, genetics express itself. And so there is actual, I need to go get the data, but there is actual concrete things to be able to suggest that if we work on environment, we will absolutely severely impact the behavioral outcomes. That's medical fact. So we can categorically say that if your environment is positive, it will absolutely impact your behavior. And I think most doctors would be comfortable saying that line. Now, we can't change genetics, and honestly, some kids are programmed to be a certain type of way, and no matter what you do, they will be a certain type of way. But we can absolutely change your outcomes if we address your behavior, your environment. So early on, but also every step of the way. And that's why I keep saying the language is important, because depending on what age you're diagnosed, you can still have better outcomes the moment you start addressing your environment. From, if you got diagnosed at 25 and you change your environment to suit your diagnosis, your outcomes in life improves from there on out. So there's hope for everybody at every stage and every level, which is why DCU decided to jump on this. Yeah. And this is why businesses are jumping on this. And this is why if we create society to be more friendly, to be more engaging, to be more kind to people who are struggling with different things, we'll get better people, and that's good for everybody involved, because these kids become entrepreneurs. They can, everything you said about the school being targeted and being able to sort of go, I'm going to now teach them in a very focused space, that means that child actually gets an education. It means they come out with skill sets. It means they're employable. It means they contribute to society. It means they develop something that we've never developed. Those kids who are coming in and then going, this is helpful, if they can understand themselves that this is helpful at 5, 6, 7, 8, they're becoming people who give back and re-innovate and turn this pod into who knows what, a 3D experience. I mean, the cycle and the impact of creating individuals who are good at life, you just can't document that in numbers. Yeah. You just can't, which is why I'm a pediatrician, because it's like you help a kid, you help an adult, you help a grandparent, they become, you know, the knock-on effect of that is just endless. Now, we do need to wrap this up, so Griffin has the last question.
You know, I just love how, you know, you're not acting like you're an expert in any of these sort of things. It's just like, look, this is an aid and, you know, we'll wait for the data. But have there been any locations that you've had to refuse putting one of these in so far? Or is it like, wait, if you wanted it, we can supply it? You know?
No, we've never had a situation that we felt we couldn't supply it. Because from, as I said earlier on, from our first prototype, what we found was that for these kids that were aggressive, this was actually quickly calming them down. So we had one of these in a young offenders institute, and when the guys were in assembling it, a chair was thrown across the room at them. So these, we had concerns about that place, and we were told that within a few weeks that changed environment. So, you know, once again, we never marketed this, just through word of mouth said, look, this could be a possibility. We had someone in the UK, now that hasn't happened, but we had someone in the UK from the prison services getting on, because an awful lot of people end up in the in prison purely because of what you were talking about earlier, not having a good start, having not having the resources to help them, and they end up accidentally in crime and incarcerated. So they're considering, would this be helpful in that environment? So, as I said, new areas just keep finding us, just by word of mouth.
The knock-on effects are endless.
Just word of mouth, yeah.
I actually was going to ask this question, but you kind of answered it when you mentioned your man in the UK. Like, how are you planning on getting scientific data?
So we hadn't planned on getting scientific data because it's quite expensive to do a clinical trial. So our decision was, look, the word of mouth that we're having is sufficient. So we're okay with that. You know, that's actually working for us from a marketing point of view. So because how it actually happened was Professor Andy McDowell was keynote speaker at the Irish Autism Conference. So we were in the auditorium and people within As I Am and speakers were using the sensory pod to calm themselves before they were going to go up and talk, because most of the people that were speaking had autism. He didn't, but he was there and he was promoting his books on arousal and stuff like that. So he was seeing cause and effect over the 2 days of the conference, because he was the keynote speaker on both days. So he was seeing people going in, stimming or whatever, and coming out. And this just intrigued him. And he came up to me at the end of the conference, and I thought he was trying to sell me a clinical trial. And I said, look, we wouldn't have 60 grand to pay for a clinical trial. So look, things are going fine by word of mouth. He said, no, I'd like to do it. I think there's a lot of mumbo jumbo and doubtful products out there. He said, I've just seen this. I can see what's happening. I'm dead keen. So he had contacts within Birmingham University and Birmingham Hospital. And they have one in Birmingham Children's Hospital. That's where they've done the clinical trial, or the clinical trial is ongoing. But suffice to say, they have purchased the sample that we gave them to trial, because they said, look, it's making a huge difference.
So you give them a sample to try and they just bought it out, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that itself tells a story.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a great ending point. I think I like to do a wrap-up video. I'll let you sit in here and slide over and catch some video. Okay. But thank you.
Not at all, Faber. Thank you. I think this obviously gives us an opportunity to spread the word to a whole new audience.
Absolutely. Okay, a whole new audience is correct. I think a lot of parents will be interested in this.
Incidentally, on that point, we often find that the biggest advocates are the parents.
Yeah.
So parents will have seen this, or a child will have used this, and then they want this in their
Go to
school.
their parents. So I hope that this video is posted and you get a flurry of calls from all the schools.
Well, hopefully. An interesting anecdote. We had a local school here. A child was progressing from primary into secondary. And prior to going into the secondary school in Tala, there was an open day. So he went into the secondary school. He was very anxious about it. And he had told his mum all about this. He went to the open day. They had a sensory pod in the secondary school. And he came skipping home to his mum. He said, "This is amazing. I was in the sensory pod. It's very relaxing. I'm now looking forward to going to secondary school."
Nice.
But then what this child did was he said, "You know what? I would love to get one of these for our primary school that I've just left."
What a cool kid.
He did a GoFundMe.
What a cool kid.
It was in the Tala Echo and all that. Did a GoFundMe, and we obviously worked with them, and it was on the RTE News, and he got it into the school for free.
I love that for him. What a cool kid. See, this is what I'm talking about. So he went from, this is cool, to an entrepreneur mindset himself and said, I'm going to solve a need. That's business right there.
Yeah.
That's the power. And you can't capture that in numbers. Do you know what I mean? Amazing.